A lot of people have made videos about Fear and Hunger 1 and the lore, the implications, how it all fits, the canon, the non-canon endings, everything. And I have a feeling that not as many people really took a look at Fear and Hunger 2 Termina. So that's kind of what I'm here to do. I'm not really like a great video person, and this is kind of just my thoughts and what I think about the games and stuff, as my other videos were. So I'm just going to do what I usually do. I'm going to try and put Fear and Hunger 2 in a understandable manner and make it make sense as we go through the game. Anyways, thank you for clicking on the video. We'll get into it. The soothing sound of the rail tracks. You're not used to such peaceful and tranquil atmosphere. You can't help but let your mind wander. You reminisce what has led you to this point in life. Despite your homeland suffering greatly from the First Great War, you've had a peaceful and balanced childhood with both of your parents and many siblings. The Northern capital Aldegard was rebuilding their destroyed cities when news about hostilities in the Eastern Europa were broadcasted on the radio. It sounded like the beginning of another worldwide war. You were still too young to take part in defending your borders, so you had to figure out an alternate way to help out your home front. You had a knack for mechanics and electronics, so ultimately it came down to those two lines of studies. Here you can choose whether you want to learn electronics or mechanics. I usually choose mechanics because it gives you wrench toss, which is pretty much one of the most useful skills in the game, especially in the beginning, as it can pretty much one-shot most of the basic enemies around the old town. And most of Abella's skills are easy to learn as you go through the game. So I simply just recommend learning mechanics, and then later on you can just level up her skill tree. Because you were the eldest child, you had a natural habit of taking care of those around you. Many of your close relatives marched to battle, and nothing could have gotten you more frustrated than your inability to help people more directly. You had already matured to adulthood, but because of your expertise in engineering, your role on the home front was more important than what you could have achieved on the battlefield. The home front was in disorder too. Someone had to step up and cover all the missing men now dying far away on some remote battlefield. Your broad shoulders could carry the burden and the increasing workload. They had to, because if not you, then who? During one particularly stormy night, while you were returning home after your 12-hour day, you ran into a foreign man on a rain-soaked alleyway. The man noticed you and desperately tried to run, for it only to collapse after a weekly 10 meters or so. The man had been shot in the belly. Upon searching his possessions, you found his documents that said he was from the kingdom of Rondon, an allied country of Aldegards. You thought about what to do for a moment, and then you have two choices here again. You can report the man to the officials, or you can take the man back home and retire his wounds. I personally choose the second option, where Abella takes the man back to her house. This pretty much just gives you an officer sword, and while this is a weapon you can find from chests, and I'm not actually sure if any enemies can drop it, but you can basically get it from a chest. It is very useful for one of the weapons that Abella can build using her weapon crafting. It is pretty much one of the best weapons she can build besides the meat grinder, so I would just recommend doing that, but it's up to you. You took the man back home and treated his wounds. The man stayed unconscious for a week, but slowly recovered thanks to your attentive mending. As days went by, he saw your eagerness to help and frustration towards the war. He then revealed his business in Aldegard. He was part of an underground resistance organization called the Nameless Liberty Underground, NLU in short. This is a name that's going to come up very often as we actually get into like the lore behind what is going on in Fear Hunger Termina. So NLU is pretty much the Nameless Liberty Underground, and it is connected to Abella primarily for now, and it is also connected to what is going on in Fear and Hunger Termina, so let's keep going. The organization had been brewing hidden from watching eyes since the dawn of the First Great War. The NLU worked across Europa trying to subdue the advancement of both Bremen Empire and Eastern Union. The man had important documents that needed to be taken to the Kingdom of Rondon as soon as possible. Because he couldn't obviously take them there himself, he asked if you could take his role. You had been hoping for a chance to work on something bigger, and this opportunity seemed to be just that. You packed your bags and set out. As a thanks for his rescue, the man gave you his officer's sword. You traveled through Europa all the way to the Kingdom of Rondon. You found the meeting point described by the man and made contact with his colleagues. After talking briefly about the current situation in the Eastern Europa, you were asked to join the organization. They were running low on members, and your expertise would be surely to come in handy. You were led to their headquarters, and you got to choose how you'd offer your help. This is, again, another question where basically help with creating weapons, help with creating traps. Again, up to you. We all kind of know weapon craft is pretty much the most useful skill in the game, as it allows you access to creating up to 5 weapons, and they're all incredibly powerful. The NLU had spies everywhere in Europa and beyond. Combining various information snippets gathered from all across the continent, you were able to unravel the parts of a larger scheme. The Eastern Union had been working on something malevolent and ill-boding in the country of Bohemia, and it seemed like the Bremen wanted to get their hands on this project. Your deductions got a lot more weight when you heard that the Bremen army had finally occupied Bohemia. The NLU sent some of their members immediately to the capital of Bohemia, Hiiii, but you quickly lost contact with them. The organizations decided to wait and see if their members would surface, but you couldn't just sit back and hope for the best. You decided to take the first train to Hiiii and find out what happened. You were told that if you needed support in your mission, you'd recognize the leader of the Bohemian branch of the NLU from her red shoes, an important detail. With this little information about the task at hand, how did you prepare for the trip? Again, you can just pretty much choose if you'd like to get medical supplies, spare parts, or food. Generally, I would just go with the spare parts because it helps you reach weapon crafting faster. You can get the weapons you want faster, and also medical supplies. I think there's enough of that in the game, and there's plenty of opportunities to just find them laying around. It is much more annoying if you just can't find a certain weapon part that you need to craft something, so I would just say go with the weapon parts. You felt tense since the moment you embarked on this journey. Every night you see the nightmare of the horrors that await you in Hiiii. Are they just dreams? You can't help but feel that there is more to the dreams that mere logic would dictate. Now, after going through the intro, we can note a few very important things about Abella and about some other characters. First of all, after noticing the figure that's drawing the ritual circle, the girl with red shoes, and we follow her around, and we follow the blue moths around, we can pretty much say this is the NLU officer that Abella is looking for. This is also Olivia's sister, and this is probably also Karen's contact in the city. So we already have 3 characters who have a connection to the girl, to the hallucination. However, a lot of the other characters in the game don't really know who this is, and it's a bit strange to me that the other characters don't really have a reason to be following this girl around. I think that's like a big issue I found when playing this game. In general, when you play Termina, I think it's just a bit too little context when you're playing the game. It's a little bit too little context and a little bit too little connection. Because besides this intro sequence where you're told a bunch of things about your character, there is the introduction to all the characters, which is going to happen in a few seconds. Besides these 2 points, the only other time there is like a similar amount of dialogue is towards the end of the game. And even then, it is very lacking in context. It is very lacking in sort of explaining things. I think the game could have used a few more moments where you talk to someone or you find some kind of information like on a book that kind of explains what you're doing. Because for the rest of the game, for the rest of the how many ever hours you play this game for, you're basically trying to follow this girl around wherever she goes. It should be stated that this game has 3 endings, and only one of them has something to do with this girl, but that also happens to be pretty much the main ending of the game, so it is a bit baffling that there's so little done in the start of the game to connect you to this person. Because when I first played the game, yeah, I assumed I had to follow this girl around. Let me tell you something. When I first played this game, I thought this was the girl from the first Fear and Hunger game. I didn't. I was playing a Bella. I had no idea who this was. I was like, oh, that's the girl from the first game. She's like helping us. I knew the Kaiser was involved, and I knew, the Kaiser is the guard from the first game, and I'm like, oh, she's helping us like take him down or something, right? Or she's helping us escape the ritual. No, she's not the girl. That this is a completely different person. I was just like, oh, maybe they changed the sprite a little bit. No, this is a completely different person. I was playing as Marina. I had no idea who this was. I had no idea what I was kind of like following them around for, besides the idea that, oh, they're probably like a good entity and they're gonna help us escape this tournament, right? Because the other 2 endings of this game revolve around you finishing the tournament, which I don't really like. I mean, do we really need 2 endings where you just do the same thing? I don't know. It's a bit. I kind of have an issue with that. I think we could have had like a 3rd ending that maybe was a bit different, but we have ending A. That is the ending we are mostly going to be going for. So in this playthrough, I will be trying to save most of the characters in the game or showcase how they can be saved. And also going for ending A, and which we will follow the plot points of ending A, while also showcasing anything else that is not part of ending A, possibly if needed be. If you're playing as Isabella or any of the other 2 characters, you know that you must follow this girl, so I think that's enough context to keep someone interested for a few hours and to keep someone following this trail. But I think the problem is, you will notice as we go through the game, there is crumbs of this information. It is very easy to go through the game, I think, and just miss these things. Miss, like, the appearances of the girl and miss a few more things. If you are under the impression that the game only has 1 ending, and that ending is to go to the tower and end things, you can miss a whole few hours of content. But at the same time, there is like one other place where you can find hints about what you have to do in regards to finding the girl in a bunch of different locations and how she will lead you. But that information comes few hours later when you're already in the city. So I don't know. I think by that point you maybe could have already killed a few contestants, and you only then realize, oh, there's a way maybe that I can escape this place and I don't have to kill people. I don't know. We're gonna get through it, but so far I just wanted to make a note of what we know so far and how the story is being laid out. Because to me, and to a lot of other people when I first played this game, after playing this intro, I was under the impression, oh, the only thing I can do is win the tournament. But no, there's other endings. I just think it's not explained that well. I think we need a bit more dialogue. We need a few more explanations about things. Ah, there you are. A mysterious person greets you in a monotonous tone. Got you pulled out of that nasty place. You were going way too deep into that rabbit hole. Now you're safe under the beautiful green hue of the moon. Welcome to the moon tower. What's going on? That is what I'm here for. To explain the situation you are currently facing. To explain the great once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that has befallen within your grasp. Since our words could not possibly reach my master, I speak in his behalf. Now, who might my master be? Well, for now, let's just say that he is the delinquent one, Rare, the trickster moon god. And me? You can call me Percolate. I'm just a humble servant of His Celestial Majesty. You're the dreamer, he is the dream. My master has invited 14 of you to join us in this jubilee of cosmic proportions. 14 candidates, but only one winner. The Festival of Termina is upon us. What is this Festival of Termina? It is a festival to give you, the humans, a peek to grandeur, and a chance to reach illustrious heights. The festival to end all festivals. This must all be very confusing to you. I won't burden you with any more information at this very moment. Just head towards the tower. That is all you need to know for now. I will gladly answer questions once you get there. But until that, let us meet again under the moonlight. Before we start the game, I think it's important to look at each character. So, as you press new game, you're pretty much greeted with like 8 characters, and they all look pretty unique, so it's not that bad. I think we can take a look at each character a little bit. First of all, it's Levi, the ex-soldier. So he looks pretty simple. He's like an ex-soldier. He's an orphan who lived in Pre-Hevel, and he was sent off to a war, and now he's coming back to Pre-Hevel because it's the only place he knows. Most people, I think, like Levi, but at the same time, most people like most of these characters, so it's not that bad. He's like a heroin addict, and that's kind of like the only thing he has going for him. Well, he's got a lot of stuff going for him, but he's not one of my favorite characters, so I'm not really going to be talking about Levi that much. I'm mostly just going to be talking about my favorite characters. Now that we actually got Levi out of the way, it's time for the best character in the game. Oh my god, it's Marita! Oh, I love Marita so much. Yeah, by the way, she's like trans, and if you don't play as her at least once, you're low-key transphobic. I can't, that's just how it works. She's really trans. We love her, and she's actually a complex character. Now, I will talk about Marina later. But of course, as we meet her through the game and stuff like that, which is, it's gonna happen. But as far as it goes, probably my favorite character and a lot of people's favorite character in the game. I absolutely love Merida, occultist magic girl, and she's actually very useful because she has a few skills, especially if you play her. If you play as someone else and you recruit her, she still has one of like the best skills in the game, which is Engrave. If you play as her, you can get this skill, but you can also start with other skills, so it's up to you. But yeah, Engrave is one of the best skills she has, and she's pretty much always in my party once you're able to recruit her. So yeah, she's the best character in the game ever created, pretty much. Yeah, she's trans, by the way, so that kind of puts her above everybody else a little bit, but at the same time, you can just headcanon everyone you want as trans, so, but it is explicitly said that she was raised as a girl, where she was born a boy, in order for her mom to be able to save her from being a dark priest. I mean, yeah, the dark priests are terrible, so it's a good thing her mom did that, and we all love Marina. And her whole thing right now is that she's coming to Pre-Hevel, and she wants to find her father because she thinks her father had something to do with all of this. So, that's kind of where we're off with when her character begins the journey. As we will see later, there is not much of a conclusion to her story. And that is not the only character who gets this treatment. Next up, we also have Olivia. Olivia is also incredibly connected to the story of the game, as she is actually the sister of the girl in red shoes, the one that Abella has met in the beginning of her story. The one that's mentioned in Abella's story, the NLU leader, yeah, that's actually Olivia's sister. So if you're also playing as Olivia, you also have like sort of a reason to look after that girl and like to follow her wherever she goes and stuff like that in the intro, right? So it's very important if you play as Olivia that you kind of follow this like story, because a lot of the other characters, like I mentioned, Levi and Marina, don't actually have much to do with the actual plot of the game. So, you know, it's how it is, I guess. But yeah, Olivia, very important plot. She is also a very special character because, as we can see here, she's in a wheelchair. So the whole thing is that she has a condition. I'm pretty sure it was strokes that she suffered, and also part of her character is that she's always been number two to her sister, which I think a lot of people can relate to. Just being number two or being overshadowed by someone else is a terrible feeling. So she can't even walk now. She's in a wheelchair, and you do need the wheelchair like when you're playing the game. There's some mechanics around it, but yeah, she doesn't actually join your party until she gets a wheelchair. And again, this is one of the characters that she's I think she is more useful if you play as her than as a teammate necessarily. But nevertheless, I did finish my first playthrough with her in my party, so it wasn't that bad. But I think as companions, as far as companions go, they're just more useful ones that you could use. However, it should, if you don't have access to anyone else, she is as capable as anyone else. And also, theoretically speaking, her legs being cut off in a battle doesn't impact her incredibly much. She can still shoot like normal, or she can still use weapons, so it's not terrible. Next up is also Abella, our character that we started with. So not much to say about Abella that hasn't already been said in the intro sequence. She's looking for the NLU leader. She's from Aldegard. She is a very big, strong woman. She's very handsome, very beautiful. You can tell I really like Abella, especially because my Steam profile picture is Abella. I really like Abella, and I really like Marina. Potentially Yuri. Yeah, I like it a lot. But, Abella, you know, we already know a fair bit about her. So, as far as it goes, we're gonna try and experience everything in the game from her perspective, and we're gonna try and think from her perspective, as in, oh, what is she thinking right now? Or what does she think about this? Or, everything from the game is mostly going to be from her perspective from now on. We also have Dan. So we did meet him in the intro to the game, where all the characters talk. He's a pretty, like, low-key depressed dude, respectfully, which kind of explains itself because in his intro sequence, he was abandoned by his parents during a god ritual. He found a mentor and a father figure, and he found a girl he really liked, which was the daughter of that guy. He had to go to war, similar to Levi, so I like the headcanon that maybe they served together or something like that, but like I think maybe they would have been on opposing sides. I'm not exactly sure how I'm not exactly sure the details, but it seems that men with blue hair in these video games tend to have tragic backstories. I really like Dan. He's one of my favorite characters. Like, if you made a chart of characters, it would definitely be Marina, Dan, and then Abella, and then it's like Osa, and then everyone else, like sort of. But Dan is like a big favorite. The only reason I don't really play him is because he's like sort of the healer character, and well, I usually play on easier mode. This is the only time I'm actually playing on Fear and Hunger mode because I thought it would be fitting for the video. Yeah, so I suppose if you're playing the easier difficulties, Dan isn't that much useful with his healing and everything, but if you're playing any other difficulty, yeah, he's pretty useful when it comes to healing. It's not that bad. Regardless, yeah, Dan is great. He's incredibly depressed, and he's basically here to find out what happened to his father figure and his wife. And there is a bit of a resolution to his character. Again, not a lot of characters get a lot of resolutions in this game. I don't know why. They have a very promising start, and then it's kind of just like, oh, whatever. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with Dan. There is also Osa. Osa is a very interesting character because he directly calls in the first game. He walks around with the burnt head of Nashra, which also canonizes one of the endings of the original game, but less about that. He has a very interesting opening to the game, as if you play as Osai, you can actually sort of go through the dungeons of Fear and Hunger in a text-based form, so I find that very interesting. He's here, guided by Nashra, to basically take down the Kaiser, as far as I know. That's like his thing. So he's sort of also searching for an alternate way to end the festival. He's not a part of like ending the festival. He's not a part of like, he doesn't necessarily want to play in the festival. He's more focused on finding the Kaiser, Legard from the first game. So not much to say about him right now. He does have some appearances later on, but he has some good moments in the game, and I personally like him. He's like one of my favorites. So for now, we're just gonna move past Osa. I feel like there will be more opportunities to talk about him later. There's Marco. Not much to say about Marco. He used to be a boxer, and he killed somebody by accident, and he's involved with the crime underworld of Fear and Hunger. So Marco is sort of the protector of the group. He's the big guy walking JoJo reference dude, and I mean, he's never been like one of my favorite characters. I guess I like him. Sometimes he is in my party. I did finish my first playthrough with him in my party. He's incredibly strong. But personally, I guess I don't see much in him, in his design or his story. I think his story is really cool. He's a great character. As a companion, I can't be bothered to really play as him, so it's he's cool. He's cool. I don't dislike him. He's just not one of my top 3 basically. So that means he's kind of hanging out. But I will talk about him later. Karen, the lady who covers wars, yeah, she's great. She's cool. She's a bit cold to everybody else, but I suppose she's not that bad. She also does have a little bit of a connection to the Anilu leader and the hallucination girl, as I'm pretty sure that's the person who tipped her off that something was going on in Pre-Evil and got her to show up here. So that's kind of her whole thing. Like, she is trying to uncover what's going on here, and the tournament is kind of the least of her concerns, because there's obviously going on, like, something else is going on besides the tournament. So she's more focused on that. At the end of the day, like, there's not much to say about these characters just yet, and I wish there was more to say about them later on. But a lot of these characters, their backstories is about it, and then it's like, oh, well, you go through the game and maybe they speak a few lines of dialogue. You do have the party talk option that does allow you to get your characters' views on different areas in the game, or what they think or how they feel about it, but in general, this is kind of it, the backstories and stuff like that, since I guess, there wasn't enough budget to give us comprehensive character stories, I suppose. But regardless about that, these characters are fan favorites, mostly because they deal with a lot of trauma themselves, and mostly because, I think a lot of people can relate to a few characters. I didn't mention it, but Karen had, like, her whole backstory is, like, stuff about, how her mother basically organized her kidnapping, and she lived in, like, far away, assuming her parents were dead and stuff like that. And it's like a whole thing. I didn't play as all of these characters personally. I mostly just stick to my top 3, but I do try and understand a little bit of each other character. So without further ado, we're just gonna continue on this now that we've kind of introduced everybody a little bit. So you're saying we're stuck here? Pretty much. The engine won't start. There must be something wrong with it. Oh, hey, the pretty girl got up. Who are you? What's going on? Oh, there were still people inside of the train? We don't know what's going on. The train left all of us here in the outskirts of the city. All the train personnel, everyone, gone, with no explanations. I tried to check up on the train, but I couldn't get it to move an inch. Now, I'm no train driver, but I'd say the thing's pretty busted. Maybe I can help. I know a thing or two about trains. Oh, well, aren't we in luck? Let me change it to my working overalls first. Sure thing. You change your outfit back to the working overalls. Looking sharp. You're ashamed to admit it, but you feel most at home in this attire. You examine the engine. You find nothing wrong with it. So, how does it look? I really don't know what's the problem. No helping it. Maybe it's better we just wait for the train personnel to return in time. If you're not in a hurry, I recommend taking a seat inside and trying to relax. Maybe we could introduce ourselves? My name is Marina. My name is Olivia. Lovely to meet you all. You can call me August. Karen Sewer, a journalist on duty. Hey, I'm Henrik. If you need any help with anything, let me know. And this mystic gentleman over here is Osa. Yeah, it was Osa, right? Silly man. I'm pretty sure it was. We were the first to wake up. Before you came out, we were talking about this. You saw a peculiar nightmare as well, didn't you? I did have a weird dream, yeah. Everyone saw the same dream before waking up in the train. The moon, the girl in the pink dress, the festival of Termina, it all felt too real to pass off as just a dream. Not this talk again. We should have asked that army pig, that Bremen pig. He was in way too much of a hurry to leave. I bet he knew something. This smells like a sadistic army experiment. Sounds exactly like something the Bremen army would be a part of. They had similar halogens experimented on war prisoners. Now that the war is over, they have to get their guinea pigs elsewhere. I wish I had your capacity and feist, but I really have a hard time believing every conspiracy theory floating around. I'm a journalist. I've covered wars, you know. I don't need some flaky eye patch foreigner telling me what's possible and what's not. You haven't seen what I've seen during these past few years. I've covered the wars too, you know. All men and women for the past few years, past decade have covered wars. What's your point again? I've seen my fair share of halogens as a doctor, and I can tell from a first-hand experience that there are no known chemicals that create visions this vivid. Especially visions that are identical with this many people. You can feel the tension between these two rising. I think that we're done here. As much as I don't have time to play happy campers with you people. I have a job to do. Which way is the city? Look up. There, over the forest top. Can you see the tower standing erect in the mist? The tower marks the center of Pre-Hevel. You can hike through the forest to get there. It's not that far away. Alright then. If I see anyone, I'll let them know you guys are waiting here. Have fun finding a scoop into that sleepy town. You know where to find us if anything comes up. What are you going to do? Wait here, I guess. As we finish talking to the rest of the group, we are told that this is the beginning of day one. We're able to talk to everyone else around the train as we see Karen head upwards towards a trail of dirt, as well as Tanaka heading downwards. But before we follow either of them, we're going to try and see what the characters are here for. And try and get as much information into these characters as we can. As we've seen just now, we can see that there's a bit of a rivalry between Dan and Karen, as they both sort of try to be in charge of what's going on. And we hear rumors about a Bremen army pig that was also on the train but ran away as soon as they landed. We have an interesting cast of characters, and we can see most of the playable characters are already available to us to talk to and to interact with. We are missing a few, but we will meet them later on. Regardless, we should get to know the characters a little bit before we set off. One of the first people we can talk to is August, and one of the first things he makes clear if you're playing as Bella is that he is also from Aldegard, or at least he has roots in there. August is pretty much a character that shares a lot of resemblances to Ragvaldir from the first game. Not only does he use a bow in combat, but he also has a few connections that we will find later on. He tells us that he is on a trip and that he has been living a nomadic life up to this point, and one day wishes to return to Aldegard with his family and live out the rest of his days. He's a pretty interesting character that while he doesn't talk to you a whole lot throughout the game, you will see him show off in a lot of areas. He constantly parkours around the town, and you can always see him wherever you go. And he specifically helps you in a few tough situations. So, yeah. August is one of the better characters in the game. Unfortunately, you can't play as him, and you cannot recruit him, and there are very few ways that he can have a good ending. Unfortunately, due to the plot, he sort of cannot do that much, even though he is probably the most skilled out of all of the contestants. Second of all, we speak to Olivia, in which we have a conversation with her about the possibilities of the dream. Obviously, we can say that it has something to do with this place, and while Olivia agrees, it seems that she's holding off on some information. Most likely, the things she means to say is that she has a condition and is unable to walk. This is something that she tells us later on, so I assume this is what she holds from you if you don't play as her. I'm unsure if she has already realized that she's been following her sister in the train, but yeah. Next, we can talk to Henrik, and he just kind of tells us that he's a chef, and there's not much of an insane character like the others that we find, as he is just kind of a simple guy. Not much to be said. He's not one of the playable characters, and he's not one of the characters that can be recruited, so he's not incredibly important. Osa, on the other hand, isn't very talkative, but he is definitely one of my favorite party members in the game, and one of my favorite characters and competitors. However, I do not often play as him. You can ask him what's his story, who he is. He's basically a yellow mage. Those, like in the first game of Fear and Hunger, he is the only one that you can actually find in this game. And yeah, he basically just talks about how, he does magic, he's cast spells, he's a yellow mage. There will be more moments with Osa later on, but for now, most of the characters seem to be very secretive about what they're here for and why they're here and what they want to do here. So it's very hard to get any information out of any of them. Marco will straight up refuse to talk to you until day 2. And if we try to speak to Dan, he is ruminating on what Karen was speaking about regarding the hallucinants, and he is considering what to do, possibly heading into the city. Regardless of any of these characters saying that they will head into the city, we cannot recruit any of them until later on, which is a bit unfortunate. The latest, well, actually not the latest, the earliest you can recruit a character are Bella and Osa. You can recruit them on day 1. Levi can also be recruited on day 1, but yeah, well, if you want to recruit Levi, you can also recruit him on day 1. In the day 1 evening, you can also recruit Mayrina. So these are the characters that can be recruited in day 1. Any other character in the game can only be recruited after day 1 and the morning or evening of day 2. And by day 3, I wouldn't recommend playing until then, because by that point, I'm pretty sure the moon scorching will begin for most of the characters, even if you've managed to help them or find them and add them to the party. If we head inside of the train, we can find Mayrina carving a perfect circle into the ground. Now, there's a very interesting interaction here that if you are playing on the easier difficulty, which I am not this time, she will actually give you the skin Bible of the God in Fear and Hunger. This works for every character as long as you're playing on the easier difficulty, as a way for the game to help you early on. Mayrina pretty much tells us that she's way too complicated for just a few lines of dialogue, which I really like this kind of meta writing always, and I really like Mayrina, so this is very welcome in this situation. She pretty much is just secretive as everyone else, but does talk about how she grew up in pre-Hevel and she's coming back here. Not much to do at the train, but as far as things go, we have learned a few things. We have learned that so far, our main objective in the game is to head to the tower, and it seems that a lot of the others are doing the same thing, as far as we can know. Everybody's a bit unsure about what to do. It is very interesting to know that if you choose to attack anyone here, as you are able to do, you can fight them. If you kill anyone, you will be restrained, in which case time will pass and you will wake up on the last day eventually, in which case, at that point, you may as well restart. I will mention this later on, how enemies can have certain reactions. Enemies or just characters in general can not, like, your actions will not necessarily result in your death, but it will result in sort of ending up in a state where you can't really play the game anymore. I mean, look, nobody's going to kill somebody, have their entire playthrough halt until the 3rd day, and then try and finish the game on the 3rd day with everybody being moon scorched and them having basically no resources or anything. Nobody's gonna play like that. You're just kind of gonna restart at that point. If you want to have that experience, you may as well be playing on the masochist difficulty in the game, which is an actual difficulty you can play, which makes it so everybody's moon scorched and you're on the final day and you cannot sit outside for too long, and there's like a million different like things that the game doesn't let you do. So as a whole, I like this introduction a lot because we meet most of the characters that we can recruit in the actual game. We meet most of the characters that are actually likable. Everyone that isn't here in this first scene is probably not a character that you really have to care that much for. Aside from a few, if they're not here, they kind of, I suppose, don't really need that introduction, either because they play a smaller role or their role is fairly insignificant. I'm still unsure why Henrik is here. I think we could have had a different character instead of Henrik. While I do understand that Henrik is the cook, he's the chef, adding him here made me think that he was a companion. And while he does play a very supportive role, where he gives you food and cooks for you, at the same time, I think it would have been interesting to have maybe a actual antagonistic character be here. Most of the conflict at the very start and the hostilities are between Karin and Dan, but I think having a different character here, someone like Caligara, someone like Pav, even Samari, would have added some kind of hostility between the entire group. It would have been interesting to walk out and see the entire party interrogating Pav, or Pav holding everyone basically hostage with his gun, or something like that. I think that would have been a strong introduction, but I also like the way that everybody's just huddled around talking. I was very confused in my first playthrough because I didn't realize you had to walk all the way to the end of the train to walk out. So I thought my game bugged because I couldn't walk out the damn doors of the train. But yeah, it should be noted that this entire interaction really changes depending on the character you're playing. If you're playing as Dan, it will actually not be you arguing with Karen. It will more so be like Karen and August having somewhat of a argument. It seems that no matter what or who you're playing as, Karen is bound to have an argument with somebody. I also like that Mayrina has a reaction that is different for every character. If you play as a Bella, she calls you the pretty lady. If you play as Dan, you're the sleepy one. It's very clear that she has different reactions to everybody. And yeah, if I was Mayrina and I saw a Bella walking around, yeah, that is the pretty lady. It should also be noted that if you're not playing as a Bella, this is where you could have a conversation with Henrik in which he sexually harasses a Bella if you're not playing as her and she's trying to fix a train, which is not great. As helpful as Henrik is, very nice. You can kill people. Do not disrespect women. That is like one of the most important things. But we're gonna like overlook that because Henrik isn't that much of a bad guy. He's just like a womanizer. So compared to a lot of the other characters in this game, Henrik isn't that bad. But oh well, who really cares that much? He's not an important character. Regardless, now that we actually have spoken to most of the characters, we've gone through the introductions, it is time to divert this video. First, we'll talk about the upwards path and then the downwards path and everything that follows through them. So first, we're going to head upwards because I think this is usually what people follow. Because when I first played, I was like, oh, Karen's going that way. Let me follow her and maybe I can get her as a companion and stuff like that. But like, obviously you can't get her as a companion because like, she's just like, oh no, I don't want to join you. I don't want to join you. I work alone. I've covered wars. So you just kind of walk after her and I guess you just not work together. I don't know. The one thing I did want to say is that the lack of companions joining you early is a bit annoying. While I do understand this is a game, this is meant to be a difficult game, it is also at the same time, each time you rest in a bed, time passes. Most of the characters in this game are only recruitable on day 2. Usually at the morning, you have to wait a little longer, but by day 2 morning, you should be able to have recruited all of the characters in the game. And I find this a little bit annoying because in day 1, you can recruit about 2 to 3 characters. You can get a full party on day 1 morning before you sleep or before you do anything like that, but you cannot be playing as Bella because she is the companions you can get as soon as you start out the game. And that's why if you're a new player, it's probably a really good idea to not play as Bella just so you can get her as soon as you start out the game. But regardless, we are going to be playing as Bella because this helps us save as many characters as we can. Well, characters that we actually like, so we're gonna see about that in a little bit. Regardless, as we go down this road, I thought of a very interesting explanation for this road, and it's very similar to Silent Hill 2. As someone who's loved Silent Hill 2 and 3, I couldn't not bring this up, but this road in particular very much reminds me of the first walk in Silent Hill 2, where you have to walk through the forest, and it takes you like 5 minutes or something like that to just walk through it. And the entire time, it feels like, oh, there's gonna be an enemy. There's something watching you, there's something coming after you. And no, that entire entry sequence in Silent Hill 2, there are no monsters, there is nothing that can harm you in the forest. You're just walking through and it's creepy and it's very long. And I remember specifically that entire sequence of walking through the forest at the start of Silent Hill 2, whether you're playing the remake or the original game, I have not played the remake, it was done to make you feel like you were unable to go back. There was not much to go back to, but that long walk through the forest meant you couldn't really go back to your car, or that you wouldn't really want to. It took you like 5 minutes to get through the forest, and it's gonna take you 5 minutes to get back. Did you really want to do all that? No, you're just gonna keep going. So, in the same way, going all the way through the forest here, going all the way through this path above the train, following Karen and just walking by and picking up all the herbs you can, all the helpful items. It's in the same way. It's the same sort of walk. Because it does take you a while to get to the city. Um, it does take you a longer bit of time to get to the old town as opposed to the other way you can go. So I do think it's in a similar matter of, oh, by this point you've gotten this far, you're not turning back at this point. By the time you're at the shack with the few moon scorch, you're almost there. You're not gonna turn back at that point. You're just gonna keep going. You're just gonna keep going, and whatever you face in the town, you're gonna face. By this point, you've decided that you're gonna go down this path. It's not exactly hard. It's not exactly like a difficult path. It's definitely like a little bit easier, I would say, than going through the other path, simply because you don't really face any incredibly difficult enemies. This is also where we can see Abella's wrench toss pretty much do most of the work, because most of these entry level enemies, these beginning NPC Moonscorch, they will go down with a single wrench toss. You can also choose to attack any of the citizens that are sitting around. You can also attack any of the villagers that are standing around and talking that are non-hostile to you, and you can also just wrench toss them once. And then as you do this, you're gonna find it very annoying that you have to equip the wrench each time, which fair, whatever, but oh my god, I I didn't actually look, but I really wish there would be a mod where it just automatically re-equips your wrench, or it just doesn't leave your inventory, because to me it feels like such a, I get it to a certain extent. Is like in battle, you will have to spend a turn to re-equip your wrench. I get that, but having to re-equip it every time you finish combat with like one hit is just, I just find it a bit annoying. Um, in combat, it is an actual like strategy to where, oh, you are going to have to re-equip it, and I think that does mess you up sometimes, because doing damage with the wrench and doing damage with your fists is not the same thing. You are very weak when you're only using your fists, so you gotta be careful how you use the wrench. Another very important thing about wrench toss is, as you can see, we have the 3 ref points in this game, and when you have 3 ref points all filled up, you get 2 attacks in that turn. The problem is, if you have wrench toss, you're not gonna toss your wrench twice. You're gonna wrench toss, and that's gonna be it. Abella's not gonna do like an armed attack right after. That's just gonna be it. So I recommend, if you are using the wrench and you do have 3 rev ups, just do a normal attack, because you're gonna get 2 of them. If you throw your wrench, you're basically throwing away all of that saved up rep points. So it's no real point to doing it unless you're just doing a normal attack. I should probably also talk about ref points to a certain extent. I will bring them up again later, but these are pretty much used for any skills or magic casting. For example, later on, Mayrina has a set of skills that you can get from her skill tree, or if you play as her, where she actually begins battles with 1 or 2 ref points, which for a mage caster is really strong. Stuff like this differentiates characters from one another. Abella doesn't really care about ref points. She doesn't really need them for anything, whereas Osa and Marina really need to make use of these. Besides that, combat isn't really that crazy. I mean, it's the same stuff as the first game. You can have your hands cut off, your limbs cut off. There is also the coin flip attacks. Now, it should be noted that some characters in this game have entire ending sequences if they hit you with their coin flip attacks. For example, when we actually reach the mayor's mansion and we fail a coin flip against the priest, the Dark Priest, there will be an entire ending sequence where our character is strung up in the town square and there's an entire ritual going on. I'm not going to show that because I don't really like it. But the thing is about this entire scene is that then you are eventually saved by August from back at the train, and you are allowed to keep playing the game. You're going to be missing your legs, and there's no guarantee that you have found a book of Sylvian at that point. And for extra info, books of Sylvian actually give you the ability to gain limbs back, which is very cool, I think. But they can only be done at imperfect circle. But yeah, there is also another death sequence where a villager traps you with a bear trap during a fight, in which case he will throw you to the pigs and you will die being eaten alive by pigs, which is really, really just dark. Like them, it's rough out here in the pre-Havel streets. A wrench toss, man, it cannot get you everywhere, let me tell you that. But as far as it goes, combat isn't really that difficult. You can guard against most coin flip attacks, in which case they won't actually do anything to you as long as your main character is guarding against them, because your other characters aren't really gonna be harmed by an ending sequence because they're not the main characters. I think going through this village specifically as well reminds me very much of playing Dark Souls 1 and going through the Undead Burg and those early locations in the game. Mostly because you're gonna spend a lot of time and a lot of hours seeing these same places. When I first played Fear and Hunger 2, it took me about 20 hours to actually get inside of the city. And you may think that's bad, you may think that's good. I went through this village 100 times. I was walking through here, I was walking through here like it was my house. I know this place like the back of my hand. Okay, let me tell you that. I know this place like the back of my hand. Part of the reason I was dying so much is because I didn't know how to save the game, because I would sleep in the bed playing as Marina. Samuri would wake me up and I was like, oh, so did I save or did I not save by sleeping in the bed? So I would be confused and then I would die to something and then I'm like, oh, okay, so I didn't actually save then. So I'd have to replay the entire intro again. Or something stupid would happen, like, I don't know, I actually do everything fine and then I die through some, I don't know. One big enemy that was really hard to me is the pig man, the Vile that we meet later on. And I'm gonna talk about him because oh my god, he is incredibly easy to defeat if you know what you're doing. But regardless, I do think it's a fair comparison to be like, oh, this is like the Undead Burg in Dark Souls. Because in Dark Souls, no matter how many playthroughs you do, you're gonna spend like a little bit of time in that area. Same with Old Town here in Termina, you're gonna spend some time in Old Town anyway. When you're in the city, you're kind of gonna be going through areas, just looting stuff. But I think when you're in Old Town, there's so much early game items to find and a lot of easy early game enemies you can defeat, that is just sort of an area where it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take my time, I'm gonna explore it a little bit because it's a place of great early game resources. The same way that in Dark Souls 2, the Undead Settlement and the Underberg are great places for early game farming, early game items, and just like an easy time, you know? If you want, you can kill all of the characters here, all of the Moonscorched. You can cut their heads off and you can exchange their heads for moonstones. I said moonstones, so this is pretty useful depending on like if you have a lot of god affinity by this point in the game. I didn't have any god books until I got to the Mayor's Mansion, so it really depends how like lucky you can get with bulk shelves and stuff like that. Depending on how you play the game, depending on who you play as, you can have a few skin Bibles by now, but really you're probably only gonna have one or you're gonna have zero. Getting a lot of soul stones is only going to help you level up your character's personal skill tree as opposed to any gods right now. So while you can get a lot of soul stones to level up your character, I'm not sure there is that much to level up just yet. Um, I would just recommend keeping them a little bit for later or something like that. But yeah. Going back to the very beginning of the game, as we finish talking to everybody on the train, we can go down the opposite path from the train. This is actually a path that Tanaka goes down. Unfortunately, in my playthrough, I suppose I didn't speak to him and he went up ahead of me, so I didn't get to see him like walk around. But if you decide to go down this way first, you'll actually have Tanaka with you at a few locations. This way is very similar. You just mostly no enemies and you just find a few items to help you out on your journey. There's a very important stash of items that you can find at this specific grass patch just by the blue herb. It gives you a rifle, some ammo, and the bolt cutters. Now, these bolt cutters are very important because depending on how you play the beginning of the game, you may or may not be able to open the gates to the city. There are other ways to get into the city, but the bolt cutters are pretty much a very simple and easy way of just opening the gates without having to do anything else. You can pick up the bolts, a rifle, and some ammo. These items are here probably left by the devs, and maybe when the new update comes out, there's a bit of a chance that they're not going to be here anymore. But it's generally pretty useful to have this in case you want to get around some of the restrictions of the game. Me specifically, I picked these up just to have them, and also because just opening the gates to the city allows you to sort of save a character without doing all of the work of going through the sewers if you're not able to open the gates yet. But we're going to get to that later. For now, just remember that this patch over here has the bolt cutters and a rifle. Regardless, we're going to continue upwards until we find the shack with all the dead corpses. If you have the symbol of Venushka here, you're able to skip to a pretty far part into the game. However, at this point, since we're by ourselves, we have nobody to help us, and we also don't know the symbol of Venushka. It is probably just a better idea to just continue forward and not worry about this for now, since it's going to become relevant later. As we continue upwards, we find the Woodsman Shack, and this is pretty much one of the difficult enemies in the beginning of the game. I don't recommend fighting him unless you have like 2 or 3 companions at least. It's really dangerous, especially if you can't cut off his hands in time. He's pretty much going to cut off all of your limbs. He's really dangerous, but he's also pretty easy to avoid if you just kite him. You just got to loop him like you're playing Dead by Daylight. It's not that difficult. We also have the goat here. Again, we cannot do much in this area until we kill the woodsman. So for now, we're just going to leave it. There's 2 ways you can actually proceed from here. You can go to the left of the building and go into the forest, or you can go upwards, which is going to find us at the center of the town. Now, going left here is very important because we do find Tunnel 7. That is going to be relevant in a little bit, and I will explain why I don't want to go in there just yet. Going up leads us to Old Town. So compared to going to the right side, we're already in Old Town. We went through a few screen transitions, but it is definitely a lot shorter than going through the right. We are a few screens away from actually being at the mayor's mansion. The enemies on this side of Old Town are a lot more difficult, and most of them are not going to go down with 1 hit from the wrench, which makes navigating this place a lot more scary than the right part of Old Town. Especially because here you not only have the ladies with 2 knives, the guys with the bear traps, but you also have the Vile, the pig mask dude. He's really difficult unless you know how to deal with him. In my first playthrough, I was scared of this guy, and it was an incredibly difficult fight. Until I eventually learned that if you simply use the talk option and you just tell him, like, you pretty much rage bait him, and ask him what each time he tries to say anything, you will get a coin flip attack. And if you succeed that coin flip attack, he just dies because he takes his mask off to talk to you, and all of the pesticides and all the mess out of the canister go into him, and he just dies. I don't know why we don't die immediately. I guess the coin flip we do is sort of his coin flip. Like we do it for him or something like that, and he loses his coin flip, and I don't know, but he just dies. And one of the hardest characters to beat in the early game, it just dies. He does a crazy amount of damage, and I do not recommend fighting him properly. Just do the talk option. There's probably other talk options in the game that I just haven't bothered to see. I know in the first game you could get away from having the dogs attack you by throwing meat to them. I'm not actually sure if this is the same in this game because I just never bothered. You don't fight that many dogs in here, so yeah. Regardless, as we explore the old town center, we actually find another perfect circle. And if we have any sort of skin Bibles of the God of Fear and Hunger, or Almir, we can actually use them here. If we recall as well, Marina was creating a perfect circle back on the train. So if we have the skin Bible of Almir, we can actually make portals between every perfect circle. This would actually not be that bad because you can make a perfect circle portal here and you can make a portal back at the train, which means you would have access just outside of the city gates and you could quickly teleport back to the train. It's up to you if you want to do it. You can also use the skin Bible of the God of Fear and Hunger on these circles to save your game. Now, if you're playing on the easier mode, which I am not this time, but pretty much all of my playthroughs have been on easier mode. If you're playing easy mode here, you actually have 3 saves. On each God of Fear and Hunger save, you have 3 saves before the statue cracks. And if you don't remember or anyone doesn't know, this is actually the girl from the first game. So the God of Fear and Hunger existing in this game pretty much makes it so the first ending of the game, where the girl becomes a god and ascends, is canon. Now, that would also mean that because the Kaiser is here, Lagarde from the first game, that would also mean that a certain ending with him living is important. There is the ending where he becomes the Yellow King, but there's also the ending for Darcy where she resurrects him. So it's, both of the endings can be correct at once. The way I always interpreted the endings of Fear and Hunger or the story, at least in the first game, is that every companion, every character goes on the journey by themselves. Everyone is in the dungeon at the same time, and they all go through the same journey. Certain characters do different things and certain characters go down different paths, but at the end of the day, they all end up with the ending they wish to get. For example, Kahara probably took the girl to become Ascendant. That's why we never hear from Kahara again. Whereas Ragvaldir became a monster slayer, and his family actually continued their lineage as seen in August, who is pretty much a descendant of Ragvaldir. We will learn more about this a little bit later because there is a few other characters that return from the first Fear and Hunger. But regardless, these perfect circles are very important, either for saving the game without sleeping or also just making blood portals so that you don't have to travel so much to where you lose mind and hunger. Exploring the rest of the old town center isn't really that much, as when we finally choose to go back towards the mayor's office, we managed to come across Levi in the underground. This is one of the characters that we actually saw in the beginning in the character selector, but we didn't actually see him with everyone else at the train. There are a few characters that are actually missing from the train scene in the start that we can very much see when we see the list of contestants or when we meet them on the outside. And I'll talk about each one of those as we meet them. But for now, this is Levi, and he's a bit scared. There is a chance to recruit him after this. As I've previously stated, he is a heroin addict, and the only way he will join your party is if you give him heroin at a later point in the game. I wasn't actually sure about this the first time I played because I was like, oh, if I give him heroin, am I not like a bad person for enabling things? And it's like, I guess not. I guess it doesn't matter as long as you just give people drugs they want, they'll fight for you and stuff. So, deal with that as you will, I suppose. Regardless, as we finish going through the town center, we arrive back at the mayor's mansion, and it's time to actually go inside. No, we can finally go inside at the actual mayor's mansion, and this is sort of a checkpoint in the game. Like, getting here is sort of your first goal, while also not really being a goal. Depending on how you progress in the game, this is probably gonna be like the first place you actually have to fight someone. There's a few ways this entire building can play out. Obviously, we first of all we find a bunch of bookshelves downstairs. There's about 5 or 6 bookshelves. So you have a lot of chances to get some skin Bibles. If I remember correctly, when I was playing, I think I got Grogoroth, Sylvian, and the God of Fear and Hunger. That's pretty much the most important one you have to get is the God of Fear and Hunger, because all the other ones are sort of, well, I mean, you don't need them unless you're playing as Abella or Osa or any magic centered character. You do not necessarily need all the skin Bibles, but it does obviously help, and getting the God of Fear and Hunger skin Bible is very useful. If you get lucky, it's really good. Regardless, we go upstairs, and you can do 2 things here. You can go talk to Henrik, but we can do that in a little bit. First of all, it's really important to get through this room with the Dark Priest. However, at this point, since I'm by myself, I don't really want to take on the Dark Priest because he does a lot of damage, and I'm just not ready to fight him. I'm just gonna wait to get a second companion first. Regardless, we go downstairs, we get the manor key, we get the chainmail armor, and then we go downstairs again through the opening in the floor, and we find this room, and I genuinely do not understand what the point of this room is. I tried looking it up, and I'm like, I just don't get it. I assume it's something to do with, like, you know, some kind of dark rituals downstairs. I'm just not aware what this is supposed to mean. But this is where you find one of the 3 parts to make the chainmail armor or whatever it's called. Like, I didn't find the other 2 parts. I don't know where they are, to be honest. Like, I don't. This is the only one I find every playthrough, so I know it's here. Hopefully, as I make these videos, I'm gonna actually look up how to find those, so I can be like, oh yeah, this is how you find them. Regardless, as you progress downstairs, you're basically in the basement right now. So we actually are able to find the food storage room, and this is very important. You can find a few things in here. You can go back up using the manor key. You can actually open the basement door, and now you can go up, talk to Henrik, and you can snap him out of his trance. Whatever, he's like hypnotized by the clock. He smells food because he's a chef, and I don't really mind Henrik that much. Like, as a joke, yeah, I'm obviously gonna make fun of the fact that, like, it's okay to kill him because he sexually harasses Abella. But at the same time, I mean, that's mostly a joke, you know. He doesn't really do much. I think it's whatever. He's a character that if you help him here and you tell him about the food storage room downstairs, he's basically gonna continue to cook food at the train for the rest of the game, and is gonna fill up your food bar, your hunger bar, I suppose. You can also like help him arrive to different locations in the game where he will continue to cook food for you. So, for example, there's like a restaurant just inside, like just as you enter the city, and he can cook food in there, and that's also a good idea because if you have the Almer portal just at the perfect circle, just a few houses ago, you can basically just teleport there and then enter the city and go into the restaurant and fill up your hunger bar. It's like a pretty nice character to have. The reason I said this can go a few different ways is if you don't snap him out of his trance, and you sleep, he will become the gentleman. In which case, you don't necessarily have to kill him. You can have an encounter with him where you have to describe the food that he presents to you. And if you do it correctly, you get 1/2 of the city keys. Now, if we help him this way, where we show him the food storage and he doesn't have this moon scourge, he will give you the sewer keys. He doesn't have the other key for the padlock at the city gates. So saving Henrik, it makes it so the only way that you can actually enter in the city if you rescue Henrik, the only way you can do it is if you have the bolt cutters, which is why I specifically picked them up. I will also showcase the sewers, but I'd prefer to kind of talk about them in their own section in the next video, because going into the sewers, you kind of progress way past the old town. Regardless, you don't actually have to kill the Dark Priest to be able to rest here. You can just leave the house, and eventually the Dark Priest will follow you outside, in which case you can just run back in. He will not follow you back in, and you can sleep. Depending on what character you're playing, most of them will have some sort of interaction here. They will have some sort of sleeping event. For a few examples, if you sleep here as Marina, one of her old acquaintances, Samari, is going to show up and stalk her, in which is going to cause Marina to wake up and question who she is. This is part of Marina's story, but at the same time, Samari herself is a contestant that we unfortunately cannot play as. If you play as Abella, as we are doing here, you're going to be confronted by another contestant, Caligula. He's like a evil ass like mob boss, and he tries to sexually harass Abella, which is, yeah, I mean, I don't know what I expected would happen with this guy. It's just, it really shocked me the first time I was playing, because for most people, if you're playing, you have never seen this guy before, so he just randomly shows up. Nevertheless, he's one of the contestants, and we pretty much one-shot him with the wrench toss. So yeah, that's another win for Abella and the wrench toss, and one abuser down, pretty much. Rest in piss, you will not be missed. You kill Caligula, and this is like probably the first time you're gonna get another contestant's soul, which is pretty good. He doesn't really have any like useful skills from what I've played. Like I think the last time I was playing Isabella, like I actually bothered upgrading his skill tree, but it didn't really help with anything. It's all about like intimidating weaker enemies and stuff, but I just didn't find really a use for it, because in most of the encounters where enemies are weaker than me, I would just kill them like fairly easily. Regardless, we're at no point to take any fights that are harder than what we could have, so I don't know. In general, this kind of just feels like whatever. I mean, we killed a bad guy, so it's good. Regardless, you can't rest in this bed anymore, so you either want to go back to the train, rest, or continue on in the city. However, one thing that we will do here is, for the sake of explaining the game properly, and for the sake of explaining all the characters in their own way, and following this certain playthrough, we will open the gates to the city with the bolt cutters, and we will walk inside. This is specifically for one main reason, which is that we need to do this in order to save a character. I mentioned before that on the trail up to the Woodsman Shack, there is another path to the left that takes us deeper into the forest. This is where we first start to uncover the game's secrets, when we find Tunnel 7. After you get past a few dogs, and if you play as Isabella, it's fine because you can just wrench toss their body and one-shot them. So you should be fine in this regard. If you're playing as any other character and you reach the tunnel, that's when Abella will come and join your party if you agree for her to do so. But it is very important that if you wish to recruit Abella into your party, you must come here before you reach the mayor's mansion. If you choose to recruit Abella into your party, Henrik will become unavailable and he will already be set on the path to moon scorching. If you arrive here after you've been to the mayor's mansion, arriving here after the mayor's mansion is just going to mean that Abella has moon scorched instead of Henrik. Or both of them could be moon scorched depending on how you did things, but really, if you're not playing as Abella, this is the first place you want to come into your playthrough. Coming here, first thing, and then just leaving will not kill any characters, and you can just head on your way. But Henrik will be doomed to Moonscorch, unfortunately. But yeah, the next part we're going to talk about is Tunnel 7. I find the tunnels in the game to be one of the most creepy areas. I don't know if it's the fact that they're incredibly claustrophobic compared to the rest of the game, but at the same time, I think it's also just the machinery vibe of it. It's so industrial. It's so it's like granite and metal and stuff everywhere. It's like it just feels scary, and also for the fact that you don't know like who can ambush you here. In the overworld, like outside of the tunnels, it kind of feels more like you see more things around you. Here, from one end to the other of all of your available point of view and field of view, you just see like the end and the beginning of a corridor, but you don't know what's gonna come out of there, right? And I think it's also just because it's such a sinister vibe. Also knowing that there can be two enemies here, depending on how you've played. Obviously, I've mentioned already that Abella can Moonscorch and become Chognar, who is an enemy that will pretty much patrol Tunnel 7. You don't have to fight her, but she will surprise you as she busts out of a wall and attempts to kill you. It's really scary. However, due to us playing as Abella and also opening the city gates, we don't have to worry about anything in Tunnel 7, so we're able to pick up all the canisters and just power on the generator, go downstairs. If we were to come here and explore further before going into the city, we would actually come across Needles killing Tanaka. If you remember, Tanaka was one of the contestants we met at the start. He's one of my favorite contestants, and Needles is pretty much one of the harder enemies, especially if you're by yourself in the early game. My general suggestion is opening the city gates, entering the city, using the bolt cutters, because everybody has the bolt cutters available to them, and then you can come in here. Tanaka will live, and Needles will move to the city, in which case he will follow you around the city and try to ambush you, but you have more of a chance of escaping him there, and well, you can get other characters to help you fight him eventually. As you explore down here, it's very clear that there's nobody here, and everybody that was here left in a rush. We can find a dead body of another soldier, which pretty much talks about... This one actually has an interesting piece of writing on him. The other one that you find in the town, it just kind of talks about how weird the place is. But this one actually talks about how the Bremen army, the army of Kaiser, pretty much stopped their advances as soon as they took power over Pre-Hevel. There is something in Pre-Hevel they want, and Kaiser himself, Lagarde, will be showing up here for whatever he seeks. And this guy was basically stationed here. We don't know what killed this guy. He's just dead. Obviously, this is also the place that we once again see the girl with red shoes that we know is the NLU officer in this part of the world. And she once again leads us with her blue mods towards this like contraption, and it's basically called a teleroscope. Or I mean, you can call it a telescope, but it's like whatever. Basically talks about a logic bunker, and if all three are turned on, the way to the logic bunker will be open. Now, you could come here first. And what I mean by this is you could come here when your playthrough begins. There is something later on that I will highlight that pretty much leads you to these bunkers. But you can also just stumble across this. And I did that when I first played. I just came across this place and I was like, okay, let's look what's in here. Obviously, I had to fight needles. So that wasn't fun. But I had a Bella on my party because I was playing as Marina the first time I played, and it was like really creepy. But yeah, this could be your first experience of these telescopes, and you're like opening these places, turning on the telescope without knowing what it really is gonna do, but you know you're being led by the girl with the red shoes. And regardless of what character you're actually playing, obviously if you're playing as Bella, Olivia, or Karen, you're gonna have more of a reason to follow this girl around. But if you're playing as Marina, Levi, or any other character that's not connected to this place, it kind of becomes a case of, well, I mean, they helped me in the beginning, sort of, kind of, because they were like leading me to safety from a janitor in the beginning area, right? So it kind of becomes like, okay, I'm gonna follow you around because you're kind of a nice person. I also think this kind of plays into your knowledge of video games as a whole, whereas like, if there's a thing, creature, entity, like guiding the way for you everywhere, you're most likely to follow it and just be like, oh yeah, that's the good person because they're like guiding me. Blue is also like a color, like a good color, right? It's like if it was red moths, if the color was red, you'd be like, okay, well that's weird, but it's blue. No, but nobody's favorite. No, nobody hates blue as a color, so of course you're gonna like follow it. Like it makes sense, like your knowledge as someone who plays video games, and also from your previous experience with this character, with the girl with red shoes. Regardless, this is where we can actually do something very interesting. So in most of the important areas in this game, you have these portals. These are rare portals, and they will transport you to rarest dimension, which again, I'm going to call on Silent Hill 2. If you've ever played Silent Hill 2, when you go through an area and you're almost at the end, and then you pretty much end up in sort of an alternate dimension of this area. This is not like an alternate dimension. This is pretty much Rare's dimension that perfectly mirrors what you actually went through. So as you go through this alternate dimension, this mirror dimension, you realize that each time you walk through a door or change floors, at the bottom left, you are still in Tunnel 7. And when you actually walk up the stairs at the end, you just get out into the real world. And this happens in most places. I find it very interesting that this is how it works, and it really reminds me of Silent Hill 2's alternate dimension, like the Dark Worlds dimension or whatever. I don't remember what it was actually called in Silent Hill 2, but like I find these pretty interesting. If for the main part that it directly replicates what you've just gone through. You don't really have to kill any of the enemies here. Most of the time, you just have to get out or grab an item, so they're not necessarily difficult. But just to remember, there is a ton of stuff to explore in Tunnel 7. While I don't have the electronic skill yet, and I would like to revisit this place, there is obviously these locked doors with key cards. Or I think they're like number pads. If you play as Bella, you can level up and unlock the electronic skill that lets you bypass these doors. You are also able to recruit a Bella, and if you recruit her, she just shows up with the skill already equipped, so she can open any of these doors for you. And most of the time, these doors only hide extra items, extra gear. They're never like locking you behind from content, because you know that would be like pretty difficult if you didn't have a Bella in your party, or you can't kill her because you don't know where she is, to get our soul, to get our upgrades, basically. So these doors are always just hiding extra gear. If you do decide to explore further into the tunnel by going through this door up here, it will just be leading you to the sewers eventually. But the tunnels are generally just empty. As long as Chognar or Needles are not here, they're empty. But they still have such a sickeningly, like, horrific feeling that someone is lurking in there. And I think that comes from the fact that you you know that there's supposed to be someone here. You know that there is nobody here, but you still feel like, oh my god, what if Needles just shows up? I don't know. What if, even if I'm playing Isabella, I'm like, what if Chognar just shows up? And is just I think I like the tunnels a lot. They're my favorite areas. I wish they were a bit longer, but also they're incredibly creepy. So we finally finished going through the first part of what actually happens in Fear and Hunger 2. I'm not sure how many videos this is going to be. I'm also not sure what's going to happen to these videos if the new update comes out before I could finish them. I mean, I'll probably just restart it, but that would be a bit disappointing. So yeah, hopefully we'll hope that the updates don't come out anytime soon until I can finish these videos, and that should be fine. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. This has been my thoughts and my experience with Fear and Hunger 2, and I'll hope to make more videos.